Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, Happy Visas. Today I'm going to be speaking about my 14 tips to becoming a successful trader, buying and selling stocks and shares. They're very simple, easy to implement. They're not rocket science. I'm going to do the most not so popular that you might not have heard of in reverse order. And then as you get to the end, I'm going to tell you the obvious things and explain why. Now, first thing, look at what the bondholders are doing. If a company has issued bonds and it's trading at 15, 16% interest per year, and and the bondholders are, wanting a higher return, it means probably there's something fundamentally wrong with the company. A company, if it's a good company, bondholders will normally pay 5 or 6% in the good old days, probably about 7, 8% now with high interest rates in banks. But look at what the bondholders are doing. Very simple to do, very easy. Look at the corporate bonds, see what they're trading at. The bondholders normally see things first. They normally see what's happening first before us shareholders realizing we've lost our shirt. Second thing, look what the directors are doing. Are the directors confident in their company? Are they buying shares? Normally a good indication, directors are buying. Some people have that strategy where as soon as they see a director buy stocks and shares, they buy as well. And what normally happens is they have a better return on their investment. In other words, they outperform a tracker or the stock market as a whole by about 10-15%. So just following what the directors of companies do will give you an indication of, the people in the know, do they have the confidence in that business? My third piece of advice would be, is the internet in love with it? Okay, this is not stocks and shares, but the reason why Bitcoin went to $66,000 is everybody was writing positive things about Bitcoin. The internet in 2018, around about that period, the internet was in love with it. I'm not saying they were right, often they're wrong, but with their advice. But if everybody's writing positive comments, normally that's a good indication that people will follow what these influencers say. Often they get it wrong, so be warned. Just because the internet's in love with it, they can quickly switch and start to say negative things. Once you see that, you might want to consider your positions. It's very important. What is the market sentiment? Are the bloggers, the influencers, like they were with Bitcoin, are they in love with these stocks and shares in the companies? Very, very important. Now, my strategy is, a lot of people say you should diversify, have a big portfolio of shares. Possibly if you have a tracker, just follow the market, then you don't need to listen to this video. But my strategy is to know 5 companies very well. You can't know everything about every company, so learn about 5 companies and learn them well. Very important. Also, if you are, do a labor of love. If you're a doctor and you know everything about medicine, look at healthcare or look at pharmaceutical stocks. Do something that complements your background. I'm not saying do that all the time. And that doesn't mean it will be a success. Look at the fundamentals. You might want to short the market. You might be in the business and you might want to short the market. Sell stocks that you don't have to buy them back later at a cheaper price. So yeah, try to do something you're knowledgeable, something that complements your career, something that you're already doing. I like to buy food stocks. Just simply, people will always eat. When I say I like to buy them, I've lost my shirt. But since I've been using these strategies, although I haven't had the finances to invest, there's a big difference when I lost my shirt, I could, stocks and shares, I could afford to lose it. Now I'm actually ahead of the game. Using the strategies that I'm telling you now, but I just don't have the finance to invest, unfortunately. So I'm just making a small amount, mitigating my risk, keeping my hands in. So yeah, that's another strategy I like. You're always going to need water, you're always going to need electricity, you're always going to need food. I guess you're always going to need clothing, so you might want to look at clothing manufacturers or online retailers. Do something, look at something that you're always going to use. Now I'm getting to an obvious one: put a stop loss, especially if it's a high risk stock, it's something new. Um, Put a stop loss. Very, very important. My other tip: do not day trade. 90% of the professionals who day trade, the professionals, almost 90% lose day trading. So most people lose day trading. Look at it for the long term. Look at quality. If you're an inexperienced, look at what you'd call in America the blue chip companies. The top 30 companies. Look that they've got a history. Look what they're doing. If you want to risk mitigate, by the big companies. Now, just because they have a lot of debt, often it's a tax write-off. I mean, Apple, it's got hundreds of trillions of dollars in the bank, but it's still to write off the tax losses. It's much more beneficial to have debt than it is to pay for something in cash, although they could quite easily do. Another important thing, and this is probably the most important, be able to read the financial reports. Very, very important. If you can't get somebody to read it, I'll give you an example. All the banks, were declaring on paper just before the 2008 financial crisis, they were declaring on paper they're making 10 billion, 15 billion, and people were buying them because they were thinking they were making 10, 15 billion. Now, the reality was they would sell a project that had 30-year maturity, like a mortgage or a loan for a house, as I would say in America. And that would have 30 years, but they were taking the profit for the whole 30 years today. That means that profit is booked today for the next 30 years, as if that person who bought that house would always pay on time, would not default, that nothing would go wrong. They were putting it into their accounts today that they'd made that profit. Now, obviously, they were not going to pay tax on it next year. They were going to pay a tax on it now. But the layman, the idiot like me, wow, it's just made $10 billion in profit. No, it hasn't. It will make 10 billion over the next 30 years. It's just booked the profit today. So it's very important that you can read between the lines, understand what is creative accounting, what is making the figures look a lot better than they are. So be very, very, very careful on that. I always like to see that they've got cash in the bank, a lot of liquidity. A lot of technology companies where you're going to make the real profits don't have that. So do a lot of research if they don't have cash in the bank and you want to risk part of your portfolio. Make sure you learn it very, very well. Remember as well, probably it's close to about 80% of companies go bankrupt, startups go bankrupt in the first 5 years. So you've got a 20% chance you're going to be around in 5 years' time. You could be a dividend hunter looking for dividend stocks. I like that as well. I like to get a little bit of income. A lot of people do that. So, but again, be very careful. Just because it's paying a good dividend doesn't mean it's a good stock. But I do like dividend hunting. I do that. I do really, really like that. Another tip I would give, people saying mortgage rates are 15%. I'm not going to be buying. In my opinion, that's in Russia, by the way. It's probably 6-7% interest rates in the UK. You want to be buying stocks and shares when everybody's losing their heads, when everybody's panicking. Obviously, timing is key, but you don't want to be buying at the high. You want all the fundamentals go against it: high interest rates, high unemployment, high this, because the price of the stock is reflected. Now, if interest rates come down, everybody's going to be buying. Like, for example, property. Interest rates come down, prices go up because, it's much cheaper. You want to be buying a property, for example. I know this is not stocks and shares, I realize that, but I'm just trying to give you an example. You buy property when interest rates are high because the prices are much cheaper. Once interest rates go back down to 1 or 2%, that's going to, drive the market higher. Obviously, it's timing again. It's listening to what central banks have to say regarding interest rates. But the same thing kind of applies when you're buying shares. So when people are losing their heads, when people are panicking, when people are jumping off that cliff, that's when you've got to be doing, proper research, looking at what the central banks are saying about interest rates, about the economy, about that, and try to hit the bottom, because then it's going to go up. You don't want to be buying when everything's expensive. That's my strategy on that. Is very, very important. IPOs, very difficult to get into, very difficult. So you have two strategies on that. You can buy already in a company that is involved in an IPO, so you get an indirect entrance to the IPO. So if somebody's doing an initial public offering and that company has strong ties, let's say with Facebook, buy Facebook to get into the IPO. The other strategy is find the broker that is doing the IPO. Many years ago, I was with Townsley and Co. It changed to Charles Schwab and things like that. And just because I had an account with that broker, they would often let me in, get involved in the IPOs. And, me as a trader, that's what broke me even. When I bought my stocks, I was losing heavily. But when I got involved in the IPOs, I would quickly get in, make a little bit of profit, and quickly get out. So I'm a strong believer in IPOs. Always look at the history of the company. Have they been around for a long time? If you're risk aversive, if you don't want to risk, look at the history of the company. Has it been around for 50 years, 80 years? Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be around tomorrow. A lot of companies still go bankrupt. Them are my tips. I'm just going to go through them. Bonds, check the bonds. What the directors are doing. Is the internet in love with these stocks like they were, Bitcoin, which drove it? And also I forgot to mention, look what people are writing on Google, on the search engines. If people are doing lots of searches about a company, probably they're doing research and they want to buy in that company. So you want to be ahead of the curve, you want to be ahead of the trend. What are people searching for on Google? And if you looked in 2017, 2018, the number one search was Bitcoin. That should automatically tell you, in hindsight, I didn't invest in Bitcoin, and I wouldn't invest in Bitcoin, to tell you the truth, unless I saw it very, very cheap, like $1,000 again, then I might. And even then, that's crazy expensive. But Bitcoin, it was obvious it was going to be successful because billions of searches saying Bitcoin, Bitcoin. And if only 1% of them searches materialized in somebody buying Bitcoin, that tells you that it's going to be a success. So buying food, buying IPOs, read the financial statements. If you can't read them and you cannot understand them, get somebody to do it for you. Never day trade, and always, on high risk stocks, new stocks. Have, not the blue chips. I don't believe in stop losses. You take the ups and downs. But have a stop loss. That could be 20%, 15%. Have a stop loss. Guys, I hope you like this video. Please subscribe. And that is my strategy to successful trading of stocks and shares. Thank you, guys.